So here we are on the MagJS version 114 tree, which is the modular version. What I'm going to show here is how to use non-module, just using a script tag to load the package and do a simple counter example. There is an actual example here, but I'm going to modify it a bit and show kind of a different way to do it that might make a little more sense if you're using um, React. So looking at this example here, we can see there's some HTML in the counter. Um, let's look at the settings, and we can see it's using the package just as a source, not as a module. So this is going to CodePen. So basically I'm doing a very simple CodePen example of using counters. Now, right now you can see some of it is inline. I'm going to change that, and of course I'll keep this CodePen example URL. I'm going to post it into the video description, so you can use it there. But what I want to demonstrate mostly is how to take kind of a MagJS uh, example here, which a lot of it is inline HTML, and make it more sort of, you might say, React-ish. So I'm going to take out this HTML, just put it up here for a second, put it inline. Now, of course, in MagJS you can do either, but we'll just keep it there for a minute, like I said. Comment it out. Now, in React, you normally have like just a core root div, right? So this might give some people a better mental picture of the similarities of MagJS and React. So here's a very simple way to say, hey, this is how your React application normally looks. You got a div, an ID root, and everything goes inside of there. So instead of referencing your HTML by the document, we're going to inline the HTML. So again, MagJS offers this flexibility. When you define a component with a component functional definition, you can do it inline, and whatever's in the document through the ID or class or tag, or you can actually pass the HTML directly. So why don't we do that here? First, we're going to do it with the application itself. So let's see, how do you attach an application? So let's just get a very simple core application right here. We're going to comment this out as well. We're going to really start in a very simplistic way. So we have some sort of generic app. That's the HTML, right? So with this generic, we're going to call it app HTML. How do we get that into that root ID there, right? So with mag, you basically use the mag constructor for pretty much everything. But like you saw in the function definition, you put the HTML here, and then you have your function props equal. When you attach the root, you're using the same mechanism, just in a slightly different way. So let me show you what I mean by that. So first of all, you obviously, like I said, you define your function definition first. So here we have our app component, which equals mag, the HTML, and then your function definition. So it's like what you want to do with the props. Whatever you return here is your placeholder definition. Very simple. You put your app component in here, you pass whatever properties you want to it, and here in your second argument, unlike a function definition, here's where we're going to attach it. We're going to say document.get element by ID root. So here we're saying I want this to go into there, right? So let's just show an example. Say hi. We want that to show up over here. We see we're getting some sort of error. Let's see what it says. App is not defined. So let's see where that's looking. I think it's looking here. So we haven't defined it. Remove that. We have our app comp, app HTML, app comp here, and then you see the hi down over here. So all we have is just very simple, just to reiterate. You have the mag function, which is this guy, being used in two different ways. One is to define a component. We call it app component, which takes some given HTML, which again can be inline or in the document object. Function definition, which takes some props and returns some definitions that will be used within the scope of this HTML block. So basically everything within the parent, all the children can be referenced within here, such as, let's say, counters. You want to say, hey, we're going to change the hi to hey. Counters, I wrote counter. So now you see it says hey. You can also reference sub-elements. You can reference it by tag, ID, or class, just the same way you kind of do it here. And then to attach it, you simply go like this, and here you can pass any properties. And here you can say counters equal Mike. And that way, you can just go like this. Equal props.counters, for instance. Oh, I missed the S again. All right, so we're looking at our result down over here. And there you see is Mike. So let's go to our original example. We actually want to pass counters. And in our original example, we wanted to iterate through it with a name and key. We want to create different examples of a subcomponent called counters. So why don't we do that? So basically we're saying we're mapping through the props counters, which gives us a name and a key over here. And we want to then load a subcomponent called counter with that given name and key. The key is important to differentiate one instance of counter versus another instance of counter. And this is really counter comp. So you have counter, kind of like might be this, or the app, and then you have the comp, which would be the instance. So we call it app comp or app component versus the app definition, which might be the function here. And then there's the app HTML, just kind of a naming convention. So why don't we look at our, so here we have the counters. Let's put that kind of closer to where it's being used. So here's the different counters. We're sending it to our app component, which is being attached to the root ID. And we're creating an app component instance of our app HTML, which is inlined, and the app function definition, which we would normally just kind of do like that. So you say const app equals that function definition. You could inline it, obviously, like we had before, if you like. It's basically just like that. And then we have the counter component. So where's the counter component? So that we have a little bit further up here. So remember we had that HTML, we took it out from the inline. So why don't we create our HTML now? We're going to say constant, say counter HTML equal. Put this down over here. So that's our HTML definition. Here's our counter component instance. We're not going to use mag state in this example. And there's our counter function definition. We're going to call our counter HTML. So now, instead of using setCount, we're going to actually call the counter again. But what we want to make sure is that whatever properties, specifically because this uses keys, and our new value. So just to reiterate, because this is being used multiple times, meaning the same component, it has to have a unique key so we know which one we're referencing. And we're calling it here, the counter composition, again, with the unique instance key and giving it a new value down here. So now how do we attach it? Now you can see there's some sort of error there. So let's see what that error says. It says unexpected token. All right, let's see what that is. It might be an extra parentheses or something. Here. So we forgot to end that. So now we have our counter composition. Oh, another count is not defined. Over here. So why don't we do that? So let's give a default count from our properties and give it a default value as well when it's initially called from the props. So now you see we have our div root being assigned two counters. So let's go back. We have our app component, which is given two values or an array of values being attached to the root. We have our app component instance, which takes our HTML, which has been inlined. It can be, like I said, within the document, and the app function definition itself, which takes some properties. Here we're giving it those two array values, and then it is looping through those counters, getting the unique name and key, and calling an instance of the counter composition or component, which is an instance of the counter. That's the app HTML, which takes the counters over there. Maybe the default could be like loading, if it was being, for instance, asynchronously loaded. And here's a counter component instance, which takes a counter HTML inline function definition of properties, and it calls on click. So this is important because you would normally have a recursive issue, right? So this is only on click, not inline, or else you would have a stack overflow, obviously. And you have a unique key being passed in here from the map, which is giving it a key. It could be an ID, it could be some sort of database key. And then we're incrementing the count value, which is going to be sent back to the unique instance of the counter component instance, which is then taking this for returning the interpolation of its template over here. So let's see if it works. So we can see we have two instances, that's great. But what happens when I click it? So you see it's being incremented here, and what if I click the second one? Uniquely incremented here. I encourage you to look at the HTML inline and see how it's being processed, and see that only the value that's being changed is being updated there, if you can see. And you can see the two counters. There's app counter, and here's the other instance here. And that has 10, and that one has 11. So if I click the second one, only that one got changed, right? There it is. So that ends our example. I'll save this this code pen in here, and until next time, talk to you later. Thanks for listening.